7 goals. That was how Curaçao's first World Cup match ended. Germany 7, Curaçao 1. For the smallest country by population ever to reach the tournament, the debut was brutal. The Blue Wave had finally arrived on football's biggest stage, only to be overwhelmed by one of the sport's traditional powers. Many people thought the story was already over, but 6 days later, Curaçao walked onto the pitch against Ecuador with something to prove. And one man produced a performance that changed everything. Goalkeeper Eloy Room made 16 saves. He kept a clean sheet. And when the final whistle blew, the scoreboard still read 0-0. It was Curaçao's first World Cup point. A country of roughly 157,000 people had just written football history. But to understand why that moment mattered so much, we need to travel far beyond the stadium. Curaçao lies in the southern Caribbean Sea, only about 60 kilometers north of the coast of Venezuela. The island covers just 444 square kilometers. From one end to the other, it is smaller than many major cities. Its capital, Willemstad, is instantly recognizable. Brightly colored buildings line the waterfront. Dutch-style facades stand beside Caribbean streets. The Queen Emma Bridge moves across the harbor, connecting the historic districts of Punta and Otrobanda. Willemstad is not only beautiful, its historic center is protected as a UNESCO World Heritage Site because it reflects centuries of trade, migration and cultural exchange. Curaçao is also politically unusual. It is not an independent republic, and it is not simply a province of the Netherlands. Since 2010, Curaçao has been an autonomous country within the Kingdom of the Netherlands. It governs most of its own domestic affairs, while the kingdom remains responsible for areas such as defense and foreign relations. That connection with the Netherlands has shaped the island's institutions, its architecture and, eventually, its national football team. But Curaçao's identity is much more than Dutch. 3 languages are official: Dutch, English and Papiamentu. Papiamentu is a Caribbean Creole language with deep Portuguese and Spanish roots, shaped by African, Dutch and other influences. It carries the history of an island where different peoples met, sometimes by choice and often through force. Long before European colonization, Curaçao was inhabited by the Caquetio, an indigenous Arawak-speaking people connected to the nearby South American mainland. Spanish colonizers arrived at the end of the 15th century. Many indigenous inhabitants were later deported and forced to work elsewhere in the Spanish Empire. In 1634, the Dutch West India Company seized the island. Curaçao's deep natural harbor made it strategically valuable, and Willemstad grew into an important center of trade and shipping. But that prosperity was built in part on one of the darkest systems in human history. During the 17th and 18th centuries, Curaçao became a major center of the transatlantic slave trade. Thousands of Africans were forcibly brought across the ocean, sold on the island and transported to other colonies throughout the Caribbean and the Americas. The legacy of slavery shaped Curaçao's population, culture and social history. In 1795, an enslaved man named Tula led a major uprising against the system. The rebellion was violently suppressed, but Tula became a lasting symbol of resistance in the struggle for freedom. That history still matters. Modern Curaçao is a mixture of African, Caribbean, European, Latin American and Jewish influences. Its culture cannot be explained by one flag, one language or one continent. The same is true of its football. Curaçao's population is small, but its football community stretches far beyond the island. For decades, many families from Curaçao built lives in the Netherlands. Their children grew up in one of Europe's strongest football systems, training at professional academies and competing at a high level. That created a unique opportunity. The national team could combine players developed on the island with professionals from the Curaçaoan diaspora. Some were born in the Netherlands. Others had played across Europe. But when they wore the blue shirt, they represented the same island. Curaçao did not build its team from population alone. It built it from an island, a diaspora and a shared identity. The rise did not happen overnight. For years, Curaçao sat far from the center of international football. It had never reached a World Cup. Qualification campaigns ended early. Bigger nations had more players, more money and more attention. But the team slowly improved. Professional standards increased. More players with Curaçaoan roots joined the national setup. Experienced coaches brought structure and belief. Then came the qualification campaign for the 2026 World Cup. Curaçao entered the final round facing Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, and Bermuda. The margins were small. Every point mattered. A 7-0 victory over Bermuda gave the team confidence, but the decisive moment came in Kingston, Jamaica. Curaçao needed to survive one final night against its strongest rival. The match was tense, physical and scoreless. Jamaica pushed for the goal that could change the entire group. Curaçao defended with discipline, courage and desperation. Then the final whistle arrived. 0-0. For most teams, a goalless draw is quickly forgotten. For Curaçao, it opened the door to the World Cup. Players collapsed to the ground. Supporters celebrated across the island and throughout the diaspora. A country with a population smaller than many football stadiums had qualified for the biggest tournament on earth. And there was another remarkable detail. At 78 years old, Dutch coach Dick Advocaat became the oldest coach in World Cup history. The smallest debuting nation had arrived with the tournament's oldest coach. Then came Germany. The gap between the teams was obvious. Germany attacked with speed and precision. Curaçao struggled to escape the pressure. The goals kept coming. 7-1. It would have been easy for the players to lose belief. A defeat like that can destroy confidence, especially on a global stage where every mistake is watched by millions. But Curaçao still had something no result could remove. They were there, they had qualified, and they had another match. Against Ecuador, the Blue Wave faced a team with more World Cup experience, more resources and far greater expectations. Ecuador controlled the ball. They created chance after chance. Almost immediately, Eloy Room was forced into action. He saved shots from close range. He blocked attempts from distance. He reacted with his feet, his hands and his entire body. The pressure never stopped, but neither did Room. By the end of the match, FIFA credited him with 16 saves, matching one of the great goalkeeper totals in World Cup history and setting a record for a match completed in 90 minutes. When the final whistle sounded, Curaçao had done something that seemed impossible only days earlier. They had answered a 7-1 defeat with a clean sheet. They had earned their first World Cup point, and they had shown that the opening match did not define them. For Ecuador, the result was frustrating. For Curaçao, it was historic. The achievement was not simply about one goalkeeper or one scoreline. It belonged to the players who grew up on the island, the players raised in the Netherlands, the coaches, the families and supporters who had carried the dream across generations. In the stands, fans waved blue flags marked by a yellow stripe and 2 white stars. For a large football nation, 1 point in the group stage may feel ordinary. For Curaçao, it became proof that they belonged. No later result can take away what this team has already achieved. They became the smallest country by population ever to qualify